Okay, we're going to pick back up on the hood project right now. First thing I did was I cut the, there's a tall rib over here. You can see it over on the other side there, peeking up over there. I just cut that down and left about 1/4 of an inch so that I could just go run some tacks along the top and keep these two halves together, because normally they'd be pinch welded together. And then I went ahead and I put in some welded capture nuts right here. They're basically flange nuts. I drilled a hole just to clearance the nut portion, then dropped it through the hole. The flange stopped it from going all the way through, and then I just welded it through the perimeter into this member here. Okay, now this is a first version of this. This may not work, may be too low, may not have enough adjustment. It might have some interference, who knows? Could be all of those things. But what I have here is a 3/16 inch steel. I slid it here and just folded it up and then re-welded it. It has a vertical flange right here that goes like this. This piece here will go in and bolt right up to the top where those captures are. And on the back side, I've got this threaded capture plate that comes off the Challenger that normally would lock into that tall flange that was here for the hinges to mount to. So basically I just relocated this floating, and these holes in here are 1/2 inch holes. They may have to be bigger to allow for more adjustment, but right now, you know, you can lift it up on either side, or lift the whole thing up and down, or drop it down depending on what you need. But again, it might not have enough adjustment, it might be in the wrong spot, who knows. Either way, this is just the first iteration. I'm going to make 2 of them up to this point. Mount, we got the 2 holes for the hinges on the side here. Mount it up, lift it up, see what hits first, see what breaks first, and we'll go on from here. All right, back to the hood project. Just wanted to show you this little, use these little plates, temporary cleat load to this inner liner here to keep this level with the top surface. That put me in the neighborhood where I wanted to be. And while I was setting these hinges, before I bolted them down, I made sure side to side I was pretty much aligned with this hole here. And then of course I have these adjusters on either side, and they're 50-50 on either side, so that I'm relatively confident that the hood is centered up where it needs to be. So with that said, I'll just take these clecos out. Take this mess over here. Anyway, I wanted to show you this also. The reason I cut this over here is because there's a slope here. It goes downhill towards the engine. So I wanted to kick it back up, correct it, make it dead level so that the hinge is mounted properly, even with the, flat level with the ground, so to speak. Anyway, you can see my little capture plate in there. It's working pretty good. It was a little difficult winding the bolts in. Couldn't tighten them up until I lifted the hood, but I was surprised that I was able to just lift it on the first shot. There's a little scratching going on over there. Well, the issue is this rim right now is heading in this direction, this lower rim that is on the hood inner liner. When I reassemble the hood, I'm going to have to kick that rim in so that the upper skin is what I can use to adjust, and there won't be any interference from anything underneath as far as clearing. Anyway, I'll just show you. This ended up working out pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to try to try to put the pistons back on this, the lift pistons, but they're not going to be a match for this hood. This hood's really heavy, so they'll just be an assist, the same as I have on my car. I have the pistons, but they won't hold up the hood, even though I put a lighter inner structure on it. Still too heavy, but it beats trying to lift this thing up all by itself without any help at all. So I'll have to have a prop rod on this hood. Anyway, on to the next thing. Incidentally, just want to add that I just want to show you what kind of adjustment I built into these plates. There are 1/2 inch holes with a 3/8 bolt, so I have a lot of shuffle room in this direction here. You have this floating plate this capture plate that came from the Challenger. I have that on the actual hood mount for the hinges themselves, so I have a little bit forward, back, but I also have up and down in that direction. If it was a real problem, I could always shim these up, shim the whole plate up, but I don't see that there's an issue with that just yet. These holes right now are just 1/4-20 holes, just temporarily, but the hinges themselves have huge holes in them, so you can shuffle the hood around in this direction, kick it this way or that way. But where I started out was in the middle of all these adjustments, when I put my plates in and everything, so that I know that I have full range of adjustment in all directions, based on the holes that I put into my bracketry. So we got a bit of an air gap underneath the profile there at the roof. As you can tell, what I was talking about before, this little peak in the center of the hood, you know, is a little higher than actually the inner liner would indicate. So now I'll just measure down to the radiator core support and adjust these stobs down on either side, get it even on either side, and hopefully we'll get rid of that before we start running into some stuff underneath, which hopefully we got enough clearance with all that stuff. You can see where this just fits. Everything here just fits. I mean, this is a real squeaker as far as that's concerned. I'm not going to be, like I said, so lucky with the fenders. I'm going to have to do something with the wheel openings, but that's part of it. But so far, everything is just squeaking in. All right, that's a whole lot better. I had to go in here, and while I had clearance the sides of the inner liner, I hadn't done it for the skin, so I'm going to have to be a little more generous right in this area right here. Give that a little bit more breathing room here. We don't want that to be buzzing and rattling and hitting the top of the shock tower. Same with over here. I have to just get a little bit more clearance in this area here, and this is almost right on top of this bottle here, so I want to get a nice bit of clearance going over top of that coolant tank right there. Anyway, on to the next thing. Before I can make any more commitments with the hood regarding, it seems to be the right length front to rear, but I'm not too thrilled with the gap that I ended up with at the back of the hood. But before I go making any alterations to the back side of the hood, I want to make sure that the hood's back as far as it needs to go, and that relates to the door seam that's already been established. I already had this fender up there once, just without the hood on there, just kind of seeing what I could see. But now with the hood on there, I've gone ahead and I've done a few things. Cut this flange off to where this is only about 1.5 inches. That runs into my pinch weld. I've gone and I've drilled out a couple of these spot welds here. The reason being is I wanted to be able to manipulate this rear side of the fender, maybe roll it out in that direction, maybe for tire clearance. So I had to get in there and cut out all of, there's spongy material in there just like there is between the hood skin and the inner liner. I already knew that I needed to get all this profile here down to about 1/2 inch, because that's all the area, all the room I have in this area as far as how high this is relative to this piece here. So I already eliminated all of that stuff down to a certain point. And unfortunately cut this away because this is right where my hinge plate is now, so I have to come up with another method to secure that area, which I've left this flange on here. Hopefully I can create a mount on the back side here. I've already done most of the clearance work here as far as how it's got to fit over the obstructions that are in there. I went ahead and trimmed this rim down to 1/2 inch, and then I hammered over the top a little bit so it's rolled up, you know, in an attempt to hopefully get more tire clearance. Also what I did was, there's a couple of spot welds. Well, there was this little tab was doubled up, so I just cut the lower tab off. There was a couple of spot welds holding this together right in this area right here. And the reason I unzipped those is because that allows me to manipulate this forward section of the fender, and hopefully, you know, I can come to some compromise before I end up having to commit to maybe cutting out the wheel opening way up in this area here, close to the body line. Well, we'll see what happens. But anyway, the reason I have to get this fender up there is because I have to see if the hood is the proper length where it's set right now relative to the door, and that involves this fender. Well, as much as I really didn't want to take this route, it looks like this is the compromise that's going to have to be made. There's absolutely no way with these wheels and tires that I'm going to be able to keep the original configuration of the 68 Charger front fenders. So I'm going to do what I did with my car, and that's radius the wheel opening, and with a flare on the top to blend it in and out of the body line. There's just no room for pulling the fender out or distorting the fender in a way that doesn't look really odd. Actually, way worse than this, I can tell you that much. And so this is the compromise we've decided to go with. We talked a long time about different wheels, different tires. Each one of those solutions is costly and creates more issues than it solves down the road. Wheel sensors, wheel speed sensors, and what their situation is relative to the transmission. If you change the tire size, what exactly wheel size can you get? That'll go over the Brembo brakes. If you don't if you can't get one, do you have to change out the hubs? Now we're really getting in deep. Raising the car came in to the conversation at one point. Unfortunately, that's very involved. Will require you to have somebody who's a spring expert, because while there's lots of products that are available for lowering these cars, this being the heaviest model would have the strongest springs in it already that would be available for the stock Challenger. So just it's just a litany of things that come into play, and so when you steer these tires out, there's no way that they can be accommodated with the stock wheel opening. So got it just taped off there right now, mocked up to see what it looks like, and it doesn't look bad. Like I said, I did it with my car, but I wanted to do it on that car. We wanted to keep this as much a 68 as possible, but of course we've made some compromises with the mirrors and the antenna on the roof and some other things. So considering the amount of work and expense it would be to try and get this to work, it's the fender that's going to have to make the sacrifice. But I think in the end, it'll all come out looking pretty good. So I'm having to employ my little handy-dandy hood lifter jig here in order to take the weight off of these hinge points, because it turns out once I put this hood skin on here, the weight of the hood is so tremendous that even though this is 3/16 and this is not moving, and this is 18 gauge steel here that this is bolted through, it wants to rotate. There's enough length here that it has a little bit of anyway, it wants to drop down, and I have to figure out a way to triangulate this hinge so that it doesn't want to do that, so that it can support the weight. The hinges support the weight fine, but the hinge points that I've come up with are just a little bit shy. Okay, so I took the plate loose from the hinges itself. Okay, it's just floating there, and I got a piece of 049 wall 3/8 tubing, and I flattened one end and bent it over to create a flange, and I've got a cleat go through the sidewall here. As you can see, I've got this is the triple thickness right here, and so eventually what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a hole large enough, kind of a sloppy hole, that I'll be able to bolt through to a captured nut on that this 3/8 rod. So what I'll do now is, with it locked into place, I'll just tack this in over here, and I'll take the whole assembly out and I'll weld it up pretty good, and then cut this excess off. I've got a 3/8 hole drilled through this plate on a diagonal so that it feeds down through it on an angle down to where it is, and hopefully that'll be enough. All it just needed was a little bit of a counterbearing force, because it wanted to roll over in this direction here. So now she's propped up like that. Should be pretty good. We shall see. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I've welded up the top side. After I cut off the excess, I welded up the bottom side. and then went ahead and put a capture nut on this side over here. Once it cools down, I'll take the bolt out of there, and I've also gone ahead and made a slightly oversized hole over here, so I've got a little bit of wiggle room with that. Anyway, hopefully that'll fix the issue. Okay, even though they're not strong enough to lift this hood because of the weight, they do assist. They will take some of the weight, which makes it a little easier to lift this thing. So putting these gas pistons back in, there's obviously already a connection point on the hinge itself, and normally they would this little stand with a ball on it usually ratchets down into this location here with a wider hood that's on the Challenger. Naturally, since we're inboard, we moved it to this location. The problem with this location on top of the shock tower is that it's got this round protrusion for some reason or other. So once I found the center of where I wanted to put it, which basically correlates with the center of this cavity here, once I did that, I just plumb bobbed down from the edge here, and then I measured over to simulate where this cavity was, centered this up, and drilled out using an 1 3/8" hole saw just to cut this part of the bubble here. Then once I cut just a little bit of this round section out, I got a hammer and a chisel and I knocked it flat. So I created a flat surface there for this washer to land on. And then I welded this all back up so that I have a nice little pocket for this thing to screw down into. Then I went ahead and I tapped it. This was where I first located, and this was a bad spot. Anyway, this location here worked pretty good. So the only thing I had to do is relieve this little lip on the shock tower edge here in order for this rod to just lay down across here once it's closed. I seriously don't think there would be enough room here to put the larger pistons in because of everything that's out ahead of it here. So we'll put a prop rod in, and I got to do the other side, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, once I got both of the pistons on, I noticed that the body of the piston was bottoming out on this part of the shock tower. So rather than cut any more of the shock tower away, I just decided to create this little disc. I'm going to weld through these two little holes here. It's threaded, so I've got some place to, it raises the tower basically a little bit, just by about 3/16 of an inch. It's really all I need. It's not much. It's just that I don't want this the weight of the hood to be binding on the body of this piston. So I'll weld this in. I've already drilled a clearance hole where I had that originally threaded, and this is threaded obviously, and I'll put that on there, and that'll just raise that up. And if I have to put a washer or something under there just to raise it a tick more, I'll be able to do that because this platform's raised now. It gives me something solid to tie that little stand to. All right, before I forgot, I made sure I drilled a couple holes in the hinge plate that goes to the hood itself. That way, because there's sloppy holes in the hinge plate itself, I'll be able to relocate the hinge plates back to the location I have them adjusted to now, which is very close to where they need to be in their final location. All right, starting work on the latch for the hood now. The first thing I had to do is kind of mock it up and figure out how far out. This is a stock location, these two bolt holes right here for the Challenger hood. Obviously you got to be able to reach this to rotate this to release the hood. And so what I did was I mocked it up to where I could see how close it was to where I could work this with my fingers, you know, relatively easily from the edge of the hood. So basically it's 6 inches out from the stock location, and then it's mounted about an inch lower because obviously the hood's lower and it rolls off a bit. So it's down about an inch from where it would normally mount back here for the Challenger. Also, I put 2 diagonals off of this bracket that I built down to the bumper structure over here, these frame horns. That's a good spot so that this has it doesn't move. It's made out of a 16 gauge or a 60 thousandths steel, and it's got a little tent structure in here to try to keep it rigid, bent up over here, and then the plate is added here. This is clearanced right here for where the latch mechanism is gonna, or the catch mechanism has got to drop through here. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that before I actually put the latch on, and the latch is going to end up being somewhere around here. You can see where I had to clearance that so that the catch goes through. Alright, with the latch bolted up now, you can see this this catch here that has to go to the hood. I've got that centered up here. You can see where I needed to relieve this bracket here so that it would pass by there without any interference. May need to be dogged out just a little bit more, depends on the rotation and the travel of this whole thing. At any rate, you can see that this piece is much higher than the catch, so I'll be bolting the catch hopefully to this bottom surface right here. That's what I've been working with. So I had to cut out a large section here so that that other piece will move by the hook. I'll probably enlarge this and clean this up and then box it back in once it's back off the car, but for now I just got a rough cut there to get everything located. Now I'll be able to drop the hood and mark out at least one bolt hole right here where I'll put an embedded nut here, and then I'm going to have a flange that's going to have to come off the other side to carry the other location point. So there's two location points. This one here will probably land in the existing plate, this structure right here. It's pretty beefy, it's double thick, so I'll be putting a nut in here. Like you see, there's already nuts embedded in here for the regular catch that goes in the Charger hood, 68 Charger hood. Well, I'll be putting a little bit more substantial one in to carry this, and then a flange to carry the other one. But this enables me now, this is centered up, to drop the hood and mark that location. Alright, so I've got the latch bolted in just with the one captured nut that's welded up into the this triple thick section over here. Now I've got to come up with something to bolt up over here, and I recovered these out of the door jambs of the car doors from the Challenger doors. These were inside the front of the door for the hinges, and there's a captured nut, and then there's also a welded stud in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away this plate here and whittle it down so that I have a nice strong piece to weld up to that back side there to fill the void and give me another attachment point once I make sure that this is in the right location. Okay, so this is what I ended up with after I cut it all away and bent it back and re-welded the edge over here so it's nice and sturdy. And you can see where it's just going to, I'll bolt it up here, I'll weld it up here, and once, like I said, I get the hood back off the car, I'll box all that in and clean that all up, make it look a little sweeter. Anyway, so splitting my time between the hood project and the inside of this back seat again, because I can only spend so much time crimpled up back here. I started to put some crash sensors back in, and got that window finally set. It took a little while longer than the first one. There's just some little differences that caused me a little bit of grief, but it's in, it's closed up. Let's go around and take a look at the outside. It's got a good seal going along the door, which is always a pain. Anyway, so that's how it looks completed. So it's on to the next thing. Okay, so I'm working on the prop rod now for the hood. So just making it out of 3/8 tube. It's 065 wall. Anyway, I took a piece of Delrin because I'm making a little clamp to hold it down, and the first thing I did was I drilled a 3/8 hole in the end, and then I ran it through the table saw in order to cut it smaller than the 3/8 at the top. You see, this doesn't want to fall through, but you've got a clearance hole through it like this. Once I had the hole drilled through, and then I had these this alleyway cut out. Then I went about, used the bandsaw to cut all these relief cuts, so I have a two little flat spots that I can use as little hold down areas where I can put the screws in. Anyway, this gives just enough to where you can just put the prop rod in there and it'll hold it and pop it out. So it has a little bit of spring to it, just enough. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you that before I got it on the car. Alright, let's see how this all works together now. Alright, that's about it. I'm going to show you a close-up now of the prop rod construction. Alright, first off, here's that little clip that I made for the rod to actually land in. I just took a piece of square tubing and I made a little U-channel here so I could screw it down on either side. I've got a 1032 bolt and a lock nut on here with a couple of aluminum washers on the inside. Take up the space. It's got a slight bend to it right here so that it doesn't land on the screw on the inner side and it crosses over there. On the top, I merely drilled a 3/8 of an inch hole in this double thick layer here and stuck the rod through. I had a temporary rod over here holding it up while I did this operation, and I had a washer that I had drilled out on the oblique in order to, so I could run it up the rod here and just kind of rotate it until it hit this surface flat. Once I got it to that point, I just tack welded it around here so that it fits nicely on an angle and has a nice little foot to it. Anyways, that's it for this week. I still have a lot of work to do under here, but I'm gonna have to get the upper skin back off of this hood. I have to put plates in the where the hinges are, and some other little paraphernalia has to be done. Also, I have to work on some things across the bar that goes across this engine bay here. I have to make a custom piece to substitute that. I have to work out what's going to happen with the cold air box now that I've got the hinges located. Things like that. So anyway, thanks for watching.